A 90-ton commercial airliner doesn't simply evaporate into thin air. You don't just turn a key on a huge passenger jet and drive it off into the sunset without anyone noticing. Yet on May 25th, 2003, in Luanda, Angola, a Boeing 727 bearing registration N844AA taxied onto a runway without permission, lifted into the darkening sky, and wiped itself off the face of the earth forever. No flight plan, no radio communication, no transponder signal, just total, suffocating silence. How does a giant commercial jet slip past world military radars less than 2 years after September 11th and leave zero physical trace behind? The official authorities want you to believe it's just an unsolved mystery. I call that absolute nonsense. This was a colossal breakdown of global security, driven by corporate greed, African airport extortion, and a worldwide intelligence network that failed when it mattered most. To understand how this disaster unfolded, look at the machine itself. This wasn't some flimsy light aircraft. We're talking about a Boeing 727-223 with serial number 20,985, manufactured in 1975. For 25 years, this exact plane flew passengers across North America for American Airlines, a sturdy, battle-tested workhorse of modern aviation. But by March 2002, its domestic passenger days were over, sitting on the hot tarmac at Quatro de Fevereiro Airport in Angola. A lease agreement between the owner, Aerospace Sales and Leasing, and Keith Irwin had entirely collapsed. The aircraft sat idle, day after day, month after month. Tropical heat beat down on its metal body, waiting for someone to make a move. Keith Irwin tried to resolve the situation cleanly. He paid $50,000 in airport fees to clear the aircraft for flight. But local Angolan officials hit him with a surprise demand for $4 million in ridiculous parking charges. That was outright extortion. Unable and unwilling to pay a $4 million charge. For an aging jetliner, Irwin packed his bags and abandoned the aircraft. He left his ground support crew stranded with zero resources. For 14 months, that giant airliner sat abandoned on the runway edge, rotting in plain sight while security looked the other way. So how did things get this bad? Subscribe to this channel right now, and you'll notice how many systemic security failures happen right under our noses. There's a dark detail about this aircraft that official reports gloss over. This wasn't a normal passenger plane anymore. The owner, Maury Joseph, had the entire cabin gutted. The seats were gone. In their place, technicians installed 10 giant black rubber fuel bladders designed to carry diesel fuel to remote diamond mines. This modification turned the aircraft into a flying hazard, a giant bomb loaded with volatile liquids. It made the airframe attractive to smugglers, mercenaries, and black market operators who ruled the skies of southwestern Africa. That brings us to the late afternoon of May 25th, 2003. Two men walked up the air stairs and boarded the idle aircraft. One was Ben Charles Padilla, an American flight engineer holding only a private pilot license. The other was John Mikel Mutantu, a mechanic from the Congo. Neither man possessed the commercial certificates required to fly a heavy passenger jet. Their assigned job was straightforward: conduct basic engine maintenance and prepare the plane so another company could buy it. They were never supposed to leave the ground, not even for a second. Yet as the sun began to drop, those three engines roared to life, with a deafening scream that shook the airfield buildings. Think about the sheer recklessness of what happened next. Operating a Boeing 727 requires 3 fully trained crew members inside the cockpit. You need a captain, a co-pilot, and a flight engineer just to handle the heavy workload. Padilla and Mutantu were a 2-man team with 0 certification to fly that aircraft type. Flying a 3-engine jet is not like driving an old automobile. You can't just guess your way through checklists or takeoff speeds while rolling down an unlit runway in the dark. They were understaffed, underqualified, and stepping directly into a death trap. 2 men, 1 giant plane. Disaster was guaranteed from the moment those tires began to roll. The jet began to move. It taxied smoothly, bypassing standard taxiways and ignoring safety protocols. Air traffic controllers watched in horror as the huge airframe rolled toward the active runway without tower clearance. Controllers frantically picked up their microphones, calling the aircraft on every emergency frequency. Nothing. Total static on the line. The pilot never answered. No voice. No explanation. Just the low rumble of 3 engines cutting through the evening air. The controllers could only watch helplessly as the aircraft positioned itself for immediate takeoff into the twilight. Then came the deliberate move that proved this was a calculated theft. The crew turned off the aircraft position lights. They manually shut down the transponder, instantly blinding airport radar and erasing their tracking data. The jet accelerated in total darkness, swerving wildly like a runaway train on broken tracks. It barely cleared the tarmac before lifting into the air. Observers watched the dark silhouette bank hard left, setting a direct course southwest over the Atlantic Ocean. Gone, just like that. A multi-million-dollar airliner slipped into the night sky, dark and silent, disappearing into the open ocean. Here's the detail that turned this theft into an unprecedented nightmare. Before taking off, the aircraft had been loaded with 14,000 gallons of fresh fuel, over 53,000 liters of volatile fuel, sat directly inside its belly tanks and cabin bladders. That immense fuel load gave the stolen Boeing 727 a total flight range of 1,500 miles. 1,500 miles. That meant this rogue jet had enough power to reach deep into Central Africa, cross borders, or fly far out into the empty Atlantic where no civilian radar could track it. It was a flying gas tank moving at 500 miles per hour through total darkness. Remember the exact date, May 2003. This theft occurred just 21 months after the September 11th terrorist attacks. The entire Western world was on the highest possible alert. The idea of a rogue, heavy commercial airliner vanishing without a trace sent shockwaves through the highest levels of global government. The CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security launched a gigantic global hunt. American intelligence agencies panicked, terrified that hostile actors had hijacked the jet to turn it into a flying bomb. If this level of total intelligence failure hits different, take a second to hit like. It helps the algorithm push this investigation to more people who need to see it. Military spy satellites were immediately pointed at every airstrip across the African continent. American reconnaissance aircraft searched remote desert landing strips, jungle clearings, and abandoned airfields from north to south. Intelligence agents checked every airport registry within a 1,500-mile flight radius. Every remote dirt strip was scanned for fresh tire tracks. Intelligence teams searched tirelessly for hidden hangars capable of housing an aircraft with a 100-foot wingspan. Their efforts yielded nothing, not a single footprint, not a single drop of leaked engine oil. How does a 90-ton piece of manufactured steel vanish from satellite surveillance? When the world's most powerful intelligence agencies are spending millions of dollars to find it? It defies common sense. To truly grasp why this search failed, understand the chaotic reality of sub-Saharan Africa in 2003. The Angolan Civil War had ended only a year prior, leaving the entire region awash with black market weapons, corrupt officials, and unregulated airstrips. In this lawless environment, a large aircraft was the ultimate prize. It could transport weapons, smuggle diamonds, or illegal cargo past porous borders with zero oversight. Rumors spread that the plane was flown to a remote runway in the dense jungles of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There, away from satellite eyes, mechanics could have quickly dismantled the plane, sold its parts on the black market, or repainted it to join an illegal smuggling fleet. Post-war chaos provided the perfect cover. In July 2003, a faint glimmer of hope emerged in the press. A Canadian pilot reported seeing what looked like the missing Boeing 727 sitting on a runway in Conakry, Guinea. The report claimed the aircraft had been given a crude repaint job to cover its original American Airlines markings, along with a fake registration number painted over its tail. Media outlets rushed to report that the mystery was finally solved, but the U.S. State Department immediately dispatched investigators to inspect the airfield directly. They checked the serial numbers, examined the engine logs, and disproved the sighting entirely. It was a total dead end. Another false rumor in a case built on ghosts. That leaves us with the crash theory. Most traditional aviation analysts argue that the plane ran out of fuel over the Atlantic Ocean and plunged into the deep water. But think about the science of ocean crashes. When a heavy passenger jet hits the water at high speed, the impact is catastrophic. The fuselage breaks apart, releasing floating debris like seat cushions, plastic interior panels, and insulation. On top of that, thousands of gallons of fuel create unmistakable slick patterns on the surface that remain visible to search planes for weeks. Yet, during the extensive sweeps conducted by naval ships in the days following the disappearance, not a single scrap of metal, plastic, or oil was ever spotted. This total lack of physical evidence fuels another, far more cynical theory: insurance fraud. Maury Joseph, the owner of Aerospace Sales and Leasing, had a history of financial irregularities. He was previously barred from serving as a corporate officer by the Securities and Exchange Commission due to allegations of accounting fraud. Following the disappearance of the 727, Joseph received a multi-million-dollar insurance payout for the lost hull. Suspicious, right? Some investigators wondered if the theft was an inside job designed to liquidate a failing asset trapped in Angolan bureaucratic limbo. It was the perfect crime. The plane is flown to a remote location, repainted, and sold to an illegal operator while the owner collects a giant paycheck. By 2005, after 2 years of dead ends, the FBI officially closed its investigation. They gave up. They simply threw their hands in the air and walked away from one of the biggest security breaches in modern aviation history. But the family of Ben Padilla refused to let his memory disappear into federal paperwork. In 2010, his sister, Benita Padilla Kirkland, publicly appealed to the FBI to reopen the case. She believes her brother was never a willing thief. She strongly believes local criminals or corrupt guards held him at gunpoint, forced him into the cockpit, and ordered him to fly until the fuel ran dry. Look at where we stand today. We live in an era where deep-sea sonar maps the ocean floor, and satellites track almost every moving object on the surface. Modern technology has located sunken shipwrecks from centuries ago sitting miles beneath the waves. Yet the disappearance of N844AA remains entirely cold. Not a single piece of wreckage has ever been detected by deep-sea mapping sweeps or modern satellite archives. A heavy machine built of titanium, aluminum, and steel vanished from the face of the Earth, and the global aviation system acted like it never existed. That's either a total cover-up or the most embarrassing intelligence failure in modern history. The real outrage goes far beyond the theft of an airplane. Corrupt officials, illegal fees, and corporate neglect created a total security vacuum in Angola that allowed an unsecured passenger jet to become an untraceable ghost. An airport in a major capital city allowed 2 uncertified men to walk onto a commercial aircraft, start 3 giant engines, shut off the transponder, and fly away into the dark without a single military jet taking off to stop them. That's sheer insanity. If a 90-ton jetliner can be stolen from a security tarmac so easily, what does that say about the safety of the global aviation system? The story of Boeing 727 registration N844AA proves that under the right conditions, even the largest objects on Earth can be entirely erased from existence. Ben Charles Padilla and John McCulmutantu vanished into the night sky, taking a multi-million-dollar airliner with them, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a wall of official silence. That's it. That's the whole story. If any of this story stuck with you, like and subscribe right now. There are far too many hidden truths waiting in the shadows, and we're going to expose every single one of them.